Well, from cyber attacks to activating sleeper cells to choking off the world's oil supplies. In the wake of the United States' attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, the question now, how will they retaliate?
As Israel and Iran trade fresh blows, Australia today declared its support for the United States strikes on 3 key Iranian nuclear sites.
Can you just explain why you've waited until now to explicitly express your support for this action?
Well, we aren't a central player in this conflict, that's just a fact.
The US administration at pains to insist its sole aim is to dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities.
We're not at war with Iran, John. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. We don't want to achieve regime change.
Before Trump chose to lob this curveball.
If the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?
As all eyes turn to Iran's next move.
There is no red line that they have not crossed. Iran reserves all options to defend its security.
Iran's options? It could take the diplomatic route.
I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy.
Or not.
There is every indication that Iran would also take that option of hitting U.S. bases or hitting U.S. assets in the region.
If he targets Americans, the military force he will see will make last night look like child's play.
It could ramp up its attacks but target only Israel. Iran could also wreak havoc on the global oil trade. Parliament voting to close the vital Strait of Hormuz, through which more than 20% of the world's oil supplies pass daily.
It's a difficult option for them because obviously it's sort of cutting off their nose to spite their own face.
Or Iran could race to build a nuclear bomb.
This is the beginning, not the end of conflict, is because when evidence emerges that Iran is rebuilding its nuclear weapons program, as I believe is likely to happen, are we, the United States, prepared to bomb it again?
Iran could also launch cyber attacks, from bank hacks to internet shutdowns, or terror attacks inside the United States, with reports Iran threatened to activate terror sleeper cells, that's spies or terrorists, inside the US if Trump attacked.
The threats are serious, and we take them seriously.
So as the conflict enters an even more dangerous phase, just how will Iran, humiliated and increasingly vulnerable, seek to save face?
Well, Alex Vatanka is the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Alex, of all the options we've listed, which do you think is the most likely? How will we see Iran respond?
So what we heard from the Iranian foreign minister earlier today in Turkey is that diplomacy for sure isn't dead, but they're saying they would like to keep the option, obviously, to retaliate following the American attack on their nuclear sites. But then what the Iranian foreign minister couldn't really tell us was, the nature of that retaliation. And we have to ask ourselves the question, who in Tehran is going to make that decision? We know Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is kind of in hiding. We have to assume he's still in communication with his inner circle. But how much freedom do they have to actually sit down and have a proper sort of conversation about what to do? Islamic Republic is not a democracy by any means but there is a culture of debating. So the question is, if they don't have the space to have that conversation that they usually would have had, are we sort of maybe looking at the hardliners and the Revolutionary Guards, men in uniform basically, who might be pushing for sort of more of hawkish retaliation versus the diplomats like Araghchi and others who are actually saying, and we're hearing this clearly from sources in Iran, who are saying, actually, guys, do you know what you're doing? Because we don't have good military options. If we do anything that we might not be able to control, that might very well bring about the sort of American reaction as Trump is promising, but really put the Islamic Republic, its future at risk.
Alex, the world is keeping an eye on the price of oil, obviously. The Straits of Hormuz. Iran, presumably using the Houthi rebels, could cause a major disruption there. Do you think that might be one option?
They talk about closing the Strait of Hormuz to get everybody's attention. They feel like they're alone, right? Nobody's there to help them. Israel has the United States. Europe pretty much backs the Israelis. Who's backing Iran? Nobody. They're alone. And you're hearing officials in Iran articulate that, you know what, if nobody's going to come to our aid, if we're going to have to fight it out and, die, we're going to try and bring as much damage and bring as many of these countries that are not helping us in the region to sort of essentially, burn with us, if you will. But that's the last resort. I don't think they're there yet. I think they're still hoping they can survive as a regime and put an end to this.
So clearly survival is perhaps the most important thing for the Iranian regime, and it faces this threat externally now. But it's also extremely unpopular amongst its own people. What's your sense of how the people are responding to the fact that their country is under attack? Are they going towards the regime, or are they still antagonistic as ever towards it and perhaps hoping that it gets toppled?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give you context, when you spend 46 years repressing your own people, don't expect they're going to turn around and love you overnight just because, Trump starts dropping bombs or Israel does. So there's a lot of anger in Iranian society. But having said that, it's early days. Some of these reports are suggesting that close to 1,000 Iranians have died already in the last 10 days. If these numbers keep coming in, every country will rally around the flag at one point. Iran will be no exception. But what does that mean in practical terms? I mean, this is the nature of this conflict isn't one where you ask volunteers to jump on a bus, go to the front, as was the case during the Iran-Iraq war, and fight for your country. So practically, even if people rallied around the flag, what does it mean? It's a big question mark.
Regime change is clearly on the table. Donald Trump is talking about it quite stridently now, actually. If the regime were to be attacked and then ultimately fall, what would follow?
Again, big question mark. A lot of energy in the Iranian opposition, both inside of Iran and certainly in the large Iranian diaspora. A lot of energy, a lot of anger. People want to see a free, democratic Iran going forward and not the theocracy of the last 46 years. There are individuals who have plans, but do they have the capacity to bring the regime down? Massive, massive question mark, because there are 5 or 6 million Iranians who still support this regime, and some of them might decide to die for it. So you got a lot on your plate if you're trying to be the next leader of the Islamic Republic and prevent the country from descending into civil war or anarchy.
So many unknowns. Alex, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.